Greetings and welcome to the Freedom Roundup podcast. I'm Sean Horner, Executive Director of the Heartland Fund Incorporated. On today's podcast, we'll be discussing law and order and how the Democrats are often freaking out about SCOTUS picks, specifically the one that's coming up for the notorious RGB's post. Presumptively, Amy Coney Barrett is the name that's been coming up today in the news. We'll also be discussing critical race theory. We'll also be interviewing Tracey Chappell, who's running for Jackson County Prosecutor. Welcome to the Freedom Roundup podcast. I'm Sean Horner, Executive Director, as I said, for the Heartland Fund Incorporated. Joining me to my right is Representative Jeff Coleman of the 32nd District of Missouri. We also have Chris Chambers, Treasurer of the Jackson County Committee, and Dakota Worrell, Policy Advisor for the Jeff Coleman campaign. Greetings, everybody.
Hey, what's up, Sean?
Hey, how's it going?
You know.
Hey, Sean.
It happens. So today, we're going to talk about law and order, specifically how law and order is affected by important policy picks. Specifically, we'll start with the SCOTUS. You can hear the Democrats screaming in the background.
That's our kids, by the
way. This is parent night out, so, you know, those of you that are parents will, you'll
appreciate
it, even more. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we want to start out with Mr. Coleman, specifically when it comes to law and order. The state of Missouri has had its bumps, especially when it comes to St. Louis. What has state government done to kind of curb that kind of behavior in general?
Excuse me.
You're fine.
I'll start off with St. Louis, and we'll add Kansas City to that list because St. Louis is at close to 200 homicides during the year. Kansas City is at 130, 140, 150. 150. And
last time I looked, it was 144.
No, it went up to
150 already?
It is at 150.
So that means we are hitting the year end of 2019 already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
And so we have to do something, and the governor put that into a special session just here recently. And in the special session, we passed a couple of bills, the Witness Protection Program.
Yep.
And so we are really working hard to try to do something to make sure that the witnesses are not feeling pressured by the people who are being charged with these crimes, and that they feel safe and are willing to come forward and put that to rest so we can charge these guys and actually prosecute them. So that was a big play this last session. There were many other bills that we were working on, some of them of which we couldn't get across the line because it takes more than just a special session to get the debate on those.
Right.
So we'll work towards those when the session comes up next year.
Good. Awesome. So welcome to the panel, Dakota. I'm gonna toss you right into the deep water.
All right.
I'm going to have you branch off the topic tonight, which is law and order, and the topic from our last podcast, which was education. I'm going to go right for what they're teaching in the schools when it comes to critical race theory. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so critical race theory is an offshoot of critical theory. If you've ever heard the term postmodernism thrown around, postmodernism is heavily connected to critical theory, which is a literary criticism approach. So everything about Western civilization is racist in a nutshell. That's what critical race theory is. It's basically Marxism, and it's anti-reason. So they reject reason. They reject rationalism. They reject capitalism. They reject individualism. Everything has to be viewed through race. Everything. So everything about everything in your life is racist.
Okay. That coincides with what we've seen. My daughter is a senior in high school, and we kind of see that bleeding into not just what you'd expect, like history or politics, but it's even seeping into like literature and English classes as well. So when it comes to that, I'm gonna reach out over here to Cress next. So Cress, when it comes to not being able to have a conversation or communicate with folks, that may have a difference of opinion. How does that affect Jackson County when you attempt to do any sort of outreach, when you're trying to have a conversation?
So previous years, I want to say this year is really different from the previous years when we have done it. In previous years, it was very hard to do anything Republican-wise in the inner city. We were knocking doors, and it was really white boy, what the hell are you doing here? Get off my step. This year is very, very different. We've seen an influx of people in the black community voting for Donald Trump, and they've been inviting Republicans in to speak with them in their community outreach centers and everything. It's actually very, very different. I forgot where I was going with that. The kids distracted me.
No. So no, that's fine. I wanted to hear if you were seeing that kind of difference, that kind of response, because I can tell you from personal standpoint, it's been very hard just on a personal level, because before, and I always use this analogy, it was, you had your team, I had my team, but we're all part of, say, the NFL. Right. We could always come together on that piece. You're a Democrat, I'm a Republican, he's a Libertarian, I don't care, but we're all Americans. But it seems like that's changed. Does that?
It definitely has. Go ahead.
So I want to say we've seen this significantly change, really, with Ryan Dirks hitting the streets downtown Kansas City, that places that previous congressional candidates have not been able to go to. And he's actually in barbershops talking to a lot of different people about the campaign and kind of about what Trump has actually done for the black community.
But I think the road that you're going down, though, Sean, is the fact that we have a movement coming across, and it starts on both coasts.
Yeah.
In California right now, they have a movement that is teaching the CRT, which is the abbreviation for critical race training theory. And what they're doing, they're teaching it in the K through 12 school system.
Right.
And it's really what it's doing is it's separating and segregating our society. Have you seen
that as a school board member? Have you seen any of that surface up in your school district yet, or vaguely speaking?
I can't say that we have actually started the policy or the push of the CRT. However, I can tell you that it is definitely relevant in our school system. Just recently, our superintendent had two folks, and I'm not going to name names, I'm not going to name colors, but they had two people of color come to him and talk about what it was like to grow up or to be part of Grain Valley. And their comments are that Grain Valley as a whole is basically racist. They don't even feel comfortable with their kids walking down the street of Grain Valley.
Right.
And I can tell you, as a resident of Grain Valley, which is, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 16,000 people, I see people of color, kids of color in our school districts that are blending together, who are going out with each other, boyfriend, girlfriend, it doesn't matter which race it is, and I don't see what they're seeing, and it's this this whole process of making these people feel a certain way, and I don't think that that's truly happening.
No. So from your standpoint, from what you've seen, it doesn't seem to be critical race theory is not actually being taught as a curriculum point yet.
The curriculum is not there yet.
Right, but it's seeping in, and you can imagine that could happen. So that kind of transitions to the next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, which was if we're going to see systemic change and we're going to allow for this or not allow for this, I think you're going to see a lot of these legislative pieces being pushed up the ropes. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Anthony Scalia's favorite person, and I'm not kidding because they were really good friends.
You are correct. They were really good friends.
Yep.
It's like, I have a really good friend who's a liberal, and boy howdy, can we not talk about policy, but we can put a couple beers down and smoke a pipe. Dakota, do you want to take this first? When we talk about substitutions that the president and the Senate will advise and consent on,
Yeah.
who do you think? Who do you like?
So obviously, I just think that this is a done deal. I think that the choice is going to end up being Amy Coney Barrett. Coney Barrett.
Yep.
I mean, Fox News last night did a sort of piece on her where they interviewed friends of hers and from high school, and I think at that point it's just it's more than just a test balloon. They're prepping people to. It's been in the news for a while that President Trump is going to nominate her, and it just came out actually. Sources close to the president and the GOP heard him say to them, and of course these are anonymous sources, but they said that he was going to go ahead and nominate her.
I was really surprised that they chose Gardner over her the first time, because I heard her name the first time around, and I thought for sure it was going to be her.
Well,
to be honest,
yeah, I kind of knew all along it was going to be Amy. It was going to be her all along.
Yeah.
I think it was just a matter of getting the public ready. Trump is a master of media relations, so I think his entire he knew who he wanted all along, and it was just a matter of making sure that people were. He was testing the waters the whole time. So I kind of I'm not trying to be contrarian or anything, but I kind of figured all along it was going to be her right from the get-go.
What did you think?
So real quick, we really thought it was going to be Amy Coney Barrett for sure. We've seen that breaking news come out earlier today about that.
Yep.
So the Dems are freaking out, though, about her pick, about Trump's pick, because she is a Catholic, she's a female, and they don't know what to do. So first of all, they're afraid they're going to... She and the other 4 justices that are conservative on the Supreme Court are going to overturn Roe versus Wade. And
and I know they're totally freaking out, but they've countered. Have you seen what they're considering now? And this is why I'm looking at Jeff. They're considering limiting justices to 18 years.
really,
Yeah. So
I had heard that.
yeah. So
instead of the lifetime appointments.
instead of lifetime appointments, they're saying 18 years.
Honestly, I don't know that I'd have a big problem with that. I haven't thought it through. This is the first time I've heard of it, but maybe that's not a bad deal.
So let me go ahead, because I think I'm on the same wavelength you are, Dakota.
Go ahead.
I figured this would be an unpopular opinion, but I think that is a terrible idea. I think that term limiting justices is an absurd idea, and I think the Democrats are only doing it now.
I agree.
Because Trump is nominating a justice and they don't like it, and that's the only.
Well,
reason.
he's done several at a time. So guess who loses the first time we hit the 18 years?
Right.
Right.
Well,
Who gets hurt?
the justifications that they're giving for this are absurd. They're disingenuous because what they're saying is this will limit partisan bickering over justices. However, when you create a cycle every 18 years where you're picking new justices, how does that limit partisan bickering over justices?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly why he's my policy advisor.
Well, I'll tell you what. So
and the Dems, though, they're not limiting themselves on this either.
No, because what they're talking about is they're talking about 18 years, and they're also talking about packing the court.
So that was the other thing.
I'm going to get my cake and I'm going to eat it too. So here's my question: is changing the number of justices and the term, is that something that would require a constitutional amendment? Because remember, it's specific. who gets picked? I'm throwing that out to you guys.
Oh,
Yes,
to anybody?
Yeah.
So-
It's a feeding frenzy. Go.
What's the Constitution say about the Supreme Court justices? We need to look at
It says life appointments.
lifetime appointments.
You,
Right.
you would need a constitutional amendment, and this is just the Hail Mary from the Democrats. Is all this is. They're flailing at this point. That's what this means. They're flailing. They're throwing anything that'll stick, and the American public generally doesn't think too hard about these sorts of things. So
No.
anything, they'll throw this out there and hope that it sticks.
Well, because the back door for them is closing.
Yes.
Right? This was their back door. Was we can always get stuff through the courts.
Correct. So they couldn't pass any legislation.
No.
So what they would do is put it through the Supreme Court just to try to get anything
or even
through.
local courts to bog
Just
down
kind of like
policies.
here in Missouri, what they're doing with Clean
initiatives.
Missouri, ballot initiatives. The Democrats cannot get anything through the House or the Senate because Missouri is a super Republican state. So what do the Dems do? They put ballot initiatives on, and then they just
misleading,
they-
misleading ballot initiatives, right? They're always package deal fallacies. They're always
they throw money at it, so it gets on TV, radio, whatever else, and then Republicans are sitting here going, "Okay, what's going on now?" We always fail about that. But to go back, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, the problem with that is the fact that it really becomes a money issue. So your donors don't want to change how that's working, because while we have the majority right now, a super majority, the people who are even the Republican donors don't want to change that, because what happens when it cycles back around to a Democrat majority and they can't get what they want through.
Plain and simple. Then
I'm just
the
telling you.
Republicans need to find new donors. Then
Not how that works.
that's exactly how that works.
But that's exactly what that has come up in our House before, in the legislature, and nobody will do anything about it because the donors don't want to give up the opportunity to possibly have that down the road when the Democrats take over the House.
Well, not-
because that will eventually happen, as history shows us.
Well, not to be too critical or anything, but if they don't want to relinquish the power to run ballot initiatives like the Democrats are doing right now as a backdoor measure, why aren't they doing it themselves right now? I mean, why aren't they exercising that power like the Democrats are? I mean, I understand they have the legislature, but I mean, come on.
Well, the problem is that when you have an issue that passes by the ballot like that, it can't be changed unless it goes out to the voters, and that's the beauty of having a legislature do this, because if we get it wrong, and it has to be changed to make it better, we can go back in and go through the process of all the debate, making sure that it comes out better the next time. If it goes through the ballot like that, it becomes constitutional, and nothing can change unless the people change it. And that's very hard to get them to understand what the issues are.
And it's legislation without the legislature is what
Right.
it
Yeah,
is. It's
and that's the challenge we've always run into, is that that specter of the back door, right?
Yep.
It's an odd choice, and like we've been saying, they by changing how the court works, they're hoping to work it in back in their favor, right?
Right.
Presuming that our president gets this new Supreme Court pick and we have a majority conservatives on there, I fully anticipate his latest executive orders to show up in one fashion or another on the court. Specifically, the one I'm talking about is the one that broke news today, where he said that Antifa and the KKK are domestic terror groups. Okay. If we know our sorry history, we know where the KKK and Democrats have kind of had this hand holding back in the day, and now we've got Antifa. Do we anticipate a pushback, either by money or by legislation, to push back on that executive order? Do you think that's going to happen? Especially not the KKK, because I think that's going to get thrown under the bus, and rightly should. But I'm talking about the Antifa and where that money's coming from.
Well, absolutely. Of course they're going to push back. There's tons of money behind it.
And U-Hauls.
Yeah. all that took pre-planning, and it took
money,
work beforehand to make the signs, to load them on the U-Hauls, money to buy and rent the U-Hauls. I mean, come on. This is not grassroots. This is not a spontaneous movement.
No.
It's been astroturf from the beginning.
No.
And of course, what is the definition of a terrorist group? They use violence and intimidation to get their political goals achieved.
I think that's the biggest challenge we're seeing, is that some of these poor kids want to be so desperately involved in something that's important, they have no idea what they're doing.
Antifa is the terrorist organization or a gang for white kids. Honest to God.
Yeah.
They can't get accepted to anything in their life because they still live in mommy and daddy's basement and they're little wusses. And I hope they can hear this. But they're little wusses, and the only thing they can do is start riots and burn everything to the ground.
Somebody put it to me that it's Boy Scouts for thugs.
It is Boy Scouts for thugs. You were correct on that.
I wouldn't grant them. I wouldn't grant them. You make them sound more tough than they are. I think that
there's no Girl Scouts anymore.
I mean, these are the kids that grew up getting a trophy for everything they did.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
that is the problem. They were never told no. They never got sat in a corner, got their butt whipped. And I think everybody at this table, we all have kids, or
I don't have kids.
You don't have kids,
no.
But
do you want to borrow some?
You were young once.
You were kidding one time.
I'm good for now.
So
we all whoop our kids' rear end.
My father was a master. He didn't even have to actually do physical harm. I had to go outside and pick my own switch.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
A couple hands get raised.
You were one of those.
No. I came back in not once but twice because I didn't have a good enough one.
Oh,
right. That's worse than actually getting hit, because then you go,
I'm going to show my age.
Good enough.
My grandma said that to me.
I guess I was not a very bright kid because I had the first time I came in.
It was a little one?
It was a big one.
Dude,
the big one's good because the little one is the one that,
My maternal grandmother, God rest her soul, she was a hoot. I never got disciplined by her, but maybe once. But she lost her pointing finger in an accident when she was younger, so she pointed with her middle finger. Which, when you did something wrong and she pointed at you with her middle finger, you felt really chastised. It's like, don't do this. It's like, whoa, big guns. We can just say no. We don't have to flip off the 6-year-old kid. And it was, I love doing that to her, bless her heart. So anyway, so when it comes to law and order, would you say that Joe Biden is strong on, I don't know,
any of this? We're all going to agree, no.
No.
We've heard his campaign say it. We have heard his running mate say it.
I actually heard them bring up the 94 crime bill as him being, and it's like, what?
Okay, so if we bring up the 94 crime bill,
we really need 5 mics. I know, because we need one for the gallery.
Do you want to talk about the 94 crime bill and how it hurt America?
No, because I just...
That's probably a podcast for another day.
I was going to say, I couldn't, I mean...
Well, we all know that Biden is just a mouthpiece right now anyway. It's not
He's
about him. It's about Kamala. If he gets in, she's the next president.
Well, remember
Kamala or Kamala?
Kamala.
Kamala.
Well, remember...
Kamala.
Kamala.
Great, because now that's stuck in my head because I needed that.
All right. Well, remember when she's quote unquote slipped up, and we know that wasn't a slip up. She said the Harris Biden administration.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know.
That was what we call in the business a trial balloon.
Yeah.
That was a trial balloon. She was testing the waters to see, because we all know it's not really even a conspiracy anymore. That kind of just confirms that was the plan.
All right, so before we end the first section of our podcast, was there anything else that you guys want to touch on that we've mentioned so far?
From the Star Tribune in Minneapolis. So last week, the city had logged 3,674 violent crimes, and this is after city council defunded their police. So we want to talk about defunding the police all around the country here, or the Dems want to talk about it. And let's see the reality where Minneapolis actually did this. 367 violent crimes, including homicide, rape, and robbery, aggravated assaults, went up 17% without a police force there. Is that something we need to do in Kansas City?
No.
So,
No, and that's at first I thought the Democrats were trying to federalize the police with
Right.
this movement. I don't think they're trying to federalize it at all anymore. I think it's actually just watch it burn, and then we'll be there to come up with new policies and ways to spend your money.
they say defund the police, and we say, oh, you want to get rid of the police? No, we just want to defund it and move it over here to
Social workers.
social workers.
Yeah.
Right. So you want less police officers and more social workers. And pretty soon it's going to be less and less police officers and more social workers.
Yep.
Do you think social workers are going to want to go into a domestic abuse situation without any guns?
Social workers already have it hard, to be honest with you, and obviously they don't want to go into a situation where they don't have backup with an armed
No.
police. But think of it this way: it's not a serious proposal. It never was. The point
No.
of defunding the police is to cause chaos.
That's what that's what I've come to realize, because I honestly thought at first it was to federalize the police force, and then I saw it just no, we're just going to watch it burn, and then we're going to swoop in. We're going to cause the problem, and we're going to swoop in with a solution.
And here's
like they always do.
here's another angle for you. Police unions have been en masse endorsing
Oh yeah,
President Donald Trump.
You are correct.
which is amazing.
Which is the last right-wing organization that right-leaning organization that the left has yet to infiltrate. So what do but destroy it because
Yeah.
they can't infiltrate it.
Yeah, exactly.
Last thing on the critical
No,
race.
go ahead. No, go
Critical
ahead.
race theory.
Yeah, because that's a topic all of its
It really
own.
blends into everything we're talking about.
Yeah, it
right?
does.
And that is, I want to make sure that people understand that's starting on the coast and it is seeping into the Midwest.
Yeah.
And I just heard a podcast today about the California. There's a teacher that's scared to death about putting her name out there. And so she went on with disguising her voice
Yeah,
and
yeah.
such, right?
Yeah.
And she talked about how they are going into the school systems and teaching this, and it's just so segregating, and it separates all of us.
It's so bad because I mean you can't even have a decent conversation with somebody if
Well, yeah, exactly. In fact, you can bring to the table all the facts you want to, and every fact that you bring up,
Yeah.
they're going to call you racist.
yeah, it's
So,
insane. All right.
just know that's out there.
Yep. We'll have to bring up critical race theory again because I really want to dive into that and I want to spend a lot more time on it. I'd like to thank all of my guests, Cress and Dakota and Jeff, for the first half hour of the Freedom Roundup. Next half hour, we'll be talking to Tracey Chappell as well. So we'll speak to you all in just a moment. Welcome back to the Freedom Roundup. I'm Sean Horner, Executive Director of the Heartland Fund Incorporated. I am now joined by Tracey Chappell, who's running for Jackson County Prosecutor.
Thank you for having me on the show, Sean.
You're welcome. I'm also joined here by Jeff Coleman.
That would be me. Glad
I
to be here
I
again.
love it. That's like your tagline now. You're going to have to do that every time now. And Chris Chambers.
That would be me. Oh, I just stole you. I'm sorry.
Wow.
That
You're
was-
going to you have to come up with your own tagline.
Hey,
Okay.
guys.
So, yeah, there's the Crest tagline. Thank you. So, first and foremost, Tracy, you need to understand that seriousness is only at the surface on this podcast because we sometimes get off the rails pretty quick. But I wanted to give you a chance to talk before the panel starts asking you questions.
What I want to know is, Tracy, you've been running this race for how long right now?
It's been almost 6 months.
6 months?
Yes.
That's a long time.
I know.
So, why did you get into the race
Yes.
as prosecutor?
I initially got into the race as prosecutor because I saw the injustices that were occurring in the office that we have now. I saw a lot of divisive tactics that the prosecutor was using. I saw cases that should not have been prosecuted being prosecuted. I saw cases that, should not have been prosecuted that were being prosecuted. I saw a lot of wrongful convictions. I saw the prosecutor throwing the police under the bus. And so these are things that should not happen. When we have a situation where the prosecutor is really dividing the community and pitting them against the police department, something needed to be done. And I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore and allow that to happen. So I had the credentials and the experience. So I became a candidate for that office.
So what are your credentials?
I am currently the prosecutor for the city of Blue Springs.
Okay.
I was appointed by Mayor Ross in 2018. In addition to that, I am really by trade a criminal defense attorney. I've second chaired a murder trial. I have tried sex abuse cases. I've tried robberies. I've tried child abuse cases with armed criminal actions, and I've done a lot of felony cases. I've also worked for the Jackson County Counselor's Office, where I was able to give legal advice to every department head in Jackson County, including the jail and including the prosecutor's office. So not only am I on the civil side and I have that experience, but I also have a plethora of criminal experience.
And you have a private practice as well?
Absolutely, yes.
And you do, what is private practice?
I do private practice. I have my own law firm, and I do criminal defense and civil litigation.
Okay.
Yes.
So I want to interrupt there. Let's get the, so to speak, elephant in the room
Yes.
out of the way.
Yes.
What party are you?
I am on the Republican Party.
You're a Republican.
Yes.
A woman of color as a Republican. I'm really impressed about that.
You know what? You should not be impressed. There's so many of us out there that are Republican, and we are black women, and we are proud of that. We are conservative in nature, and we don't want that to be missed by people who are hearing this podcast or people who are out in the communities. We are out there. We have the expertise. We have the experience for anything that we want to do, and we're doing it.
Good for you.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well,
absolutely.
It's one of those things where, and obviously the podcast, we kind of have to say it, but I mean, it's one of these things like we've seen, other strong black females come out and say, don't typecast, don't put us in a box.
Absolutely.
Right. For those voices, it'd be really hard to get any sort of movement, because I mean.
But Tracey, isn't that what you've been put in from both sides, from the Republicans and the Democrats?
When you say what I've been put in, meaning
In
a
the
box?
Yeah.
I will tell you this, Jeff. People have tried to define me and put labels on me, but I cannot be defined. And I will not be put in a box. More than anything, we have to, instead of putting labels on an individual, we have to really focus on who we are. We have to focus on our morals and our values and move beyond that.
So what do people say when you're down in the inner city and you're knocking doors and they ask you, what party are you with?
I gladly tell them I'm with the Republican Party.
What's their...
So they stop for a second,
Yeah.
because they're just some of them are just as shocked. But I will tell you this, Chris, I am finding more and more people who have looked at me and smiled and said, "Me too."
where are these people out?
But I think you have to. I think there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more people that are stopping, are refusing to vote in that block, like they used to. Whether regardless of lower income, higher income, whatever, they're looking at it from a standpoint, because we've now gone from, what can you give me to what can you protect me? What can you make sure that, am I voting for my America, or am I voting for this new one where, riots are happening and everything else is the crazy, because that's how you get your political feet, planted, and you get your stuff out there. So I'm concerned from personal standpoint that's almost what we're going for, because like even your opponent, you were talking about one of your speeches that I happened to see. You were talking about how they're not even at their job. She's not even there.
She's not.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can't prosecute unless you're prosecuting.
Well,
I'm not a lawyer by any means.
Well, I would say this also on that note. Jean Peters Baker was the chair of the Democratic Party. And when you're the chair, you have duties that you have to fulfill. And I say that she uses the prosecutor's office as a part-time job.
Yeah.
And when you use it as a part-time job, it's so clear as to why we have 150 dead bodies laying on the grounds of Kansas City. It's so clear as to when I look at Eastern Jackson County, why the property crimes are so high, because it's treated like a part-time position and it's not taken seriously.
Yeah, and it seems like we're trying to be, like Chicago or St. Louis light, right? We're just kind of going, well, that's what happens in big cities.
So what I've seen is we are turning into a new Chicago.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, we are following in the footsteps of that corrupt Illinois city, Chicago, and it's on behalf of Gene Peters Baker.
Yes.
And as much as I think Quentin Lucas is trying his hardest at being a mayor, I don't know if he's grasping the entire job.
I think with Quentin Lucas, I think he is contending with being, he's young.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so youth is playing a part in his decision making that we're seeing. And I think he wants to try to please anyone that is disgruntled with
right,
his
right.
decision making. And if you're not, I will say this, a wise soul
Yeah.
called me one day, and I needed to hear this because you get tired when you're running, and mentally tired.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you get mentally tired, but this wise soul, and I will say his name because he's sitting next to me, it's Jeff Coleman. He called me, and I don't know how he knew I needed it, but he said, as long as you stick to your platform, as long as you stick to your morals and your values, you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Because
And I think that's something that Quentin Lucas and every other politician needs to really hear and hold their feet to the fire on.
Yeah, and we were talking about Quentin Lucas in the last podcast because we were talking about his choices, remember, for city manager,
Right.
and we're like, this is not what he's saying. It's like, let's not be a big city, but yet every one of the choices were from blue big cities. It was like New
Right.
Jersey and stuff.
Right.
It's like, dang it.
I want to go back to Gene Peters Baker real quick.
Sure.
Because you talked
Yep.
about her being the chair and how she stepped down from the chair. Well, she stepped down temporarily because her plans are to go back to being the chair once the elections are over. So I think everybody needs to know that. That's just a curtain that you...
Chair of the Missouri
of the
Democrat Party.
Missouri Democrat
Yes,
Party.
absolutely.
This-
And once again, you go back to a person treating that position as Jackson County prosecutor as a part-time position. And if we allow her to have 4 additional years, we are consistently dealing with the same things that we're dealing with now.
Well, it's such a conflict of interest. to
No,
have
it is.
that.
It is. It's crazy. My wife is here. She was in the last podcast, and she just handed me this piece of information. Sorry, I don't mean to get us off track too far, but I want to mention this since we're talking about city manager. So I mentioned the 4 that we talked about. Did you know that 2 of them are under active investigation right now? And they're still being still being considered for the. And so I'm like, she handed me that, and I'm like, oh, and she's right here. So yeah,
Hey, Michelle.
does it say?
Hello.
Does your information say which 2 or just 2 of the 4?
It just says 2 of the 4. I'm going to look up which 2. That
Okay.
way, when we
Yeah,
do
give it to me
our
and-
next podcast, we'll have that.
Yeah.
But I found this. I just love looking up information. And even Tracy and me were talking about it. I just love just digging up and stuff that we're talking about. I'm like, oh, and you mentioned the city council. These, for
This
these
is
people
why I
city
joined. This is
manager,
why.
so
This is why the Heartland's going to be awesome because I've got.
I just,
my wife
I
helping
will
me with.
find this information, which 2 are actually under investigation. But I
Okay.
think that's important. I mean,
No, it
why
is.
would you have somebody that's under investigation even in consideration?
Because somebody's giving you bad advice. So when you got Mr. Coleman here, who is a golden soul and a fine person, and that's not just because you buy me dinner, but no, I'm just giving you a hard time, dude.
It was on the MEC list.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, can we get it? Yeah. Anyway, no. But no, you need to have that, especially when you have such a, because I've always thought of the Republican Party as a very big tent. We all don't necessarily have exactly the same ideals. We all have different, well, I shouldn't say ideals. Let's say policy ideas, right? So, I mean, when it comes to that, we kind of need to have that, because I don't want to be, you have to accept this dogma or you're out. You're kicked out. And so, sticking to your guns and sticking to your ideals, that's rough. I mean, especially when you run into that. So that was, I'm gonna do a quick thing real quick. That was Michelle Horner, my wife, who is the Associate Director of Heartland Fund Incorporated, Jackson County Committee member, and President of the High Noon Republican Women's Group.
Thanks, Michelle.
So there you go. And the best wifey in the world.
Oh, come on now. I will challenge you for that.
I've been married twice, and so no.
It doesn't matter. What's Jeff got to say? I can see his
I
mouth.
have nothing to say.
It's a throwdown because we both have our wives here. No, Becky's sitting next to me. She's running the soundboard. So I'm saying you can be his best. Does that work? Because
I will agree to that. She is the best wife in the world.
Somebody has to rein him in. I know this isn't your thing, but I kind of want your take on it. So we were just talking in the previous section about SCOTUS. So what is your take? Do you know anything about the Amy Coney Barrett? What do you think about that possible pick? What are your thoughts?
When I looked at the pick, and obviously we saw it today, and it's plastered all over the news. I think we need someone who is more conservative in nature in that office, because I know RBG was very liberal, and I certainly appreciate her pioneering, gender and race equality. But when it comes to conservative views, it's.
So you're a little bit concerned about Cohn not quite being as right leaning, more like a Roberts, maybe.
Pretty much,
kind of a not necessarily a swing vote, but not one that. I mean, hopefully not like Roberts where he's rewriting stuff. So
what I like to start seeing is more of a divide, more 6-3 as opposed to 5-4.
Right.
I like to start seeing more of that.
Right.
Because when you have the 5-4, it's not really telling us where their head is at.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm hoping the same as well. With her, I didn't know anything about Gorsuch, and I was kind of rooting for her the first time around because her name got batted around the first time, and I'm like, maybe.
Well, she got battered around with Kavanaugh also.
Yeah, Kavanaugh was his next one that she got named. So she's kind of mentioned twice.
Yeah.
Well, she's also been vetted, I think.
Yeah, I was going to.
Right.
And that's the thing, right? They've already kind of tested her twice, and especially with the first time around or the second time around with Kavanaugh. Sorry, I was trying to breathe at the same time I was talking. It was one of those things where it's like they kind of mentioned her, and if you saw the crowds outside the Supreme Court, they're like they're ready. Which sign are we protesting? I mean, honest to goodness, they had signs already pre-made. So, so I think that was already part of the deal.
So, Tracey, I want to know what you think about the defunding the police and where you are at on that subject.
Thank you, Chris, for that question. I've talked to a number of policing jurisdictions or police from different policing jurisdictions, and defunding the police is not a good option. People were upset. They're expressing their emotions are high, and they want something done. Defunding is not the option. Really, they're asking for monies for the police department to be reallocated to different sources, such as social work, and for social workers to come out to the calls. That's not going to be acceptable because you are asking a person who has no training whatsoever in combat situations to step into a situation and try to remedy it. You're asking to put them in danger, these social workers in danger. We need to stick with the police. If they need more training, let's get them more training. But in no way whatsoever should we defund them. When I look at what's going on in Jackson County as a whole, we need more police officers, if anything. We really do. Because I'm looking at, in eastern Jackson County, I look at Independence. They had, in probably 2019, 6,115 property crimes
Wow.
in the city of Independence alone.
Wow.
And Blue Springs had like probably about 1,599 property crimes, and other jurisdictions had around 2,000 property crimes.
Have you been speaking with various mayors around in Jackson County and kind of getting their feel for things? The state of the county, I guess, would be the best way to
Right.
put it.
I think last week I had a meeting of the mayors.
Oh,
And I
okay.
invited every mayor in Jackson County to come out and speak with me
Nice.
about what is going on in their city and how crime is affecting their city. What I learned, from Kansas City, I knew this, even though Mayor Quentin Lucas did not show up, is that in the urban core, we have the violent crime. We are
Right.
dealing with a lot of murders. In Eastern Jackson County, we're dealing with a lot of property crimes. Independence, the mayor of Independence, I would have expected her to show up, given the fact that Independence had the most property crimes out of any of the Eastern Jackson County cities.
Mayor Eileen Weir.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so when I'm seeing that, it bothered me, because I started saying, wait a minute, we are World Series champions. We've won a Super Bowl, and we're known for barbecue. We're known for jazz, but we're third in the nation for gun violence and firearm violence.
Wow.
We have to get this under control.
Yeah.
So who were the mayors that showed up and who didn't show up?
Do you want to disclose that information?
You know what? I'll keep that under wraps. I'm gonna keep that.
We know two that didn't.
Yes, but I think it sent a message loud and clear that as your next Jackson County prosecutor, I understand that you have to collaborate with your mayors. You have to collaborate with the police departments in these various policing jurisdictions in order to keep our community safe.
Well, you're the piece that, you're the law and order piece. You connect the civil and the government kind of thing.
Absolutely.
The laws that they make, you enforce. Right?
Absolutely.
I want to
Well,
go back real quick. if
No,
you
you're
don't mind.
fine.
I want to go back to the social workers, because when we talk about the social worker going out as the police officer, the one of the biggest concerns is going out to domestic violence, and that's where a lot of your volatile things happen. A lot of your police get shot, people get shot because of the domestic violence, because it's a very volatile, emotional thing. And to go out there without having any defense for you, that's a scary proposition.
It's dangerous, and more importantly, not only is it dangerous, but then you're looking at lawsuits.
Yeah.
And which comes with, our tax dollars being put in place when it should not be. Those tax dollars can be used for other things, but you're really looking at the social worker suing, and you're looking at the individuals who made the call.
Right.
They're going to sue.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing is that as you talk to the black community, right? The people that I've talked to that have talked to the black community, and I've talked to both, they don't want to do away with the police. They want the police there. It's the white Democrats that are trying to talk about defunding the police. It's the Antifa.
And defunding, like Tracy said, defunding isn't accurate. What they're actually saying is reallocating. Because as we all are aware, there's no way the Democrats are going to ever refund money. Ever. That's like a tax break. That's not going to happen.
That's not gonna happen.
That's not
You're
going to
correct.
happen. We're going to take this money. We're going to use it for something else.
Well, essentially, they've already started to defund the police. When Quentin Lucas, they talked about taking $10 million from the police officer's budget in Kansas City.
Oh, my gosh.
That is a means to defund them without actually having the label of defunding the police.
Right. You nickel and dime them to death. I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know Kansas City proper history, but I thought the police department was actually managed by the state, or is it the sheriff's department? Which of the two?
No,
It's a state.
Okay.
Yeah, the police department is managed by the state.
Okay, that's what. So how?
But the budget.
But the budget.
the budget,
Kansas City.
the budget.
So that's
Yeah.
that's not.
So what generally happens is if you can't skin a cat one way.
Yeah, that's why I was like, wait a minute, how are they able to pull the money? But I didn't realize that it was the state controls, like, I guess, the leadership. Is that how that works? Okay, and the coin purse is still
with the city. Yes.
Okay.
But the question is, though, if what are they going to do if they try to make it localized control? Is that going to be any better?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
No,
because with localized control,
it becomes.
You've had arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
And people talk about we want local control, but they don't really understand what that means. When we are seeing a mayor like Quentin Lucas,
can you help us out then on that?
I will.
Okay.
Yeah. Localized control is, we talk about now that the state has control over the police department in Kansas City. Right. You have a board of police commissioners that are appointed by the governor. There are 5 police commissioners, one being the mayor, and then you have 4 other individuals that are on the board of police commissioners that really control the day-to-day operations of how the police department works. If you had local control, then it would be the mayor / and the city council that would take over that job, and you would no longer have the board of police commissioners making those calls for the police. So, right now they're calling for the resignation or the termination of Chief Smith.
Right.
Then if there was local control, then the mayor would have the option of actually terminating him, as opposed to the board of police commissioners doing that.
So what has Rick Smith done then, or Chief Smith done, to deserve a boot out the door?
He was the chief of police.
Here's what I will tell you. After the George Floyd murder, and then you started the protest, people don't understand the unions. They don't understand how unions work, which is
police unions?
Correct.
Okay.
Or any union for that matter, because I'm sitting back and saying a police union is just like any other union.
Yeah.
It's a union.
Yeah.
And so per the union contract, if an employee does something or they're about to be disciplined, per the contract, the union has to advocate for that individual. I tell people now when they're saying, well, we don't like the FOP, we hate them. I said, well, they're a union, like Ford is a union, Chrysler has a union, the post office has a union. All these individual companies or organizations, they have unions. And so they're going to advocate for that employee because really it's per their contract.
Right.
No more, no less. And so people don't know that. And their understanding is, the union is trying to get behind cricket cops, or they're trying to come against black people, because they don't understand the process. And it's not that. So when you have those things in play and a lack of education, then you start to say, the chief of police must be in on it too. We want him gone.
Yeah.
But it really is an education piece. And when people start to understand how it works, they say, I didn't know that. And prior to that, they're like, well, he's in on it. We want him gone.
Yeah.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes remaining, and I've got my big question. This actually came up last night. So here's my question to you, and I've seen this being portrayed poorly in the news, and I wanted to ask you directly this question. I know that you were at the Back the Blue. In fact, I was there at the We the People where you did the speech right before. I think it was the day before, wasn't it, or something like that? And then not too long after that, you did you were at or present at the BLM thing as well. There are folks that are portraying that as being, I don't know how you want to put it, kind of playing both sides against the middle. Can you explain a little bit more why it was important to be at both and why you wanted to speak at both?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I think when I look at our community, when I look at Jackson County, we are so disjointed.
Yeah.
I am so tired of people fighting the police. I am so tired of our communities being stripped down to nothing, and the fighting going on between both parties, and no one coming together for the common purpose or goal. When I went to the Back the Blue rally, I understood that we have to back our police officers, because more than anything, people in the black community, they need the police officers. And they're not the individuals saying defund them or we need to get rid of them. We need them.
Right.
But the prosecutor, the current prosecutor, has pitted the black community against the police department.
Right.
And so I went to both because as your next Jackson County prosecutor, it is my job to pull everyone together, to unify everyone. And it wasn't playing the ends against the middle.
Right.
It's to unify
Right, and that's
everyone.
and that's why I wanted to hear it from you, because
Yes.
that's how it's being played. It's like,
Yeah.
wearing one hat to this and wearing no,
Nope.
no, and
Nope.
and that's what I wanted to hear from you, because it's like, no, I've heard her talk enough. That's not what we're doing here.
And quite frankly, on my Facebook page, I put, and I thought I probably should have been more articulate when I put it on there, but I put pictures of me painting on the Black Lives Matter mural, and I put on the same Facebook post, I put me at the Back the Blue rally.
Right.
Because I wanted to show people that, hey, we can do this, Jackson County. We can come together. We can unite.
Right.
And we can get rid of this violent crime when we operate together and operate as one.
And that's
And-
what I
like
thought
that.
you were doing,
Yeah.
and that's why I wanted, and that
Yeah.
because I saw some news reports in there, and it didn't overtly say anything, but it was
Yeah.
kind of playing that, and I'm like, stop that
Yeah.
crap.
Because here's what I know. Not only is the prosecutor to connect and partner with the community, and not just one community,
Right.
not just the black
Nope.
community, but every community in Jackson County, as well as partner with the police department, and you have to partner with the mayors and everyone else in order to make this work. And for people who don't get that, I'm like,
I know.
Yeah.
But I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about why and what for, because I didn't want folks to be able to make up stuff, or that kind of thing, because I just that kind of thing just drive me crazy. So anyway, Chris.
So we've heard you on the radio. Is there anything else going on with your
yeah.
campaign? Are you gonna be on any commercials on TV, any more on radio? And where can people find you at if they want to volunteer for your Tracey Chappell for prosecutor campaign?
okay, can I say something first before I get into that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot there. I know. I threw it all at you at once. I'm sorry.
But I wanted people to know also that I have been endorsed by the FOP, which is really, really good.
And that's fantastic.
Because we've talked and we understand what we have to do to move this county forward. I've also been endorsed by the local 42 firefighters and prosecutors union.
That's fantastic.
And that was especially, it was really good because these
So
are employees.
what's that one?
These are employees of the Jackson County prosecutors. They're assistant prosecuting attorneys.
Nice. So
And so
the
they
assistant
really-
prosecutors
So
are
they're
backing
endorsing-
you and not their own boss.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
That is incredible.
Because we understand what needs to happen here.
Right.
And leadership is lacking, and it's just time for new leadership so that we can take care of business and really get down to what needs to be done.
Yeah.
That is
So-
fantastic.
So for people who want to learn more about the campaign, go to electtraceychappell.com, or if you want to just see what's going on with me throughout the week or days or whatever, you can go on my Facebook page at Tracey Chappell for Jackson County Prosecutor.
Okay.
I can also be reached at 816-533-3121.
And we will have that in the show notes as well
Show
on
notes, yep.
YouTube.
Yep.
Okay.
As well.
So before we close up,
Yep.
I am going to officially, as a state representative and Citizens for Jeff Coleman, endorse Tracey Chappell.
Hey!
So please, everybody, get out and get information on her because she is awesome. I've been following her for a while now, and she is just incredible. We need change. We need Tracey Chappell in that position.
Amen.
I've been getting the feedback from my wife. She's been giving me all the good stuff. So, Tracey, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Tracey.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's fun because we're just,
Is there anything else you want to throw in before we sign off here?
I really want people to get engaged in the process. At this juncture, we really are having to police the prosecutor's office and everything that's happening. And the best way that we can do that is to get out on November 3rd and vote.
Absolutely.
Yes. And we want you to come back after you win.
Yeah, we do. We do.
I will be back.
When Tracy's in that position, you're going to see all those murders and homicides shrink down. Because she's going to be prosecuting like somebody's supposed to do.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're looking forward
Absolutely.
to. All right. And that'll conclude our broadcast for today. I'd like to thank my guests, Jeff Coleman, Representative Missouri 32nd District, Chris Chambers, and Tracey Chappell for joining us.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
All
Tracy.
right, everyone, have a good day, and we'll talk to you on the next one.
See you guys. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
This podcast has been brought to you by the Jackson County Republican Party. And promotional considerations given by Heartland Funding Incorporated, helping promote traditional values and candidates. Contribute at jacomo.gop, that's JACAMO.gop, and fundingtheheartland.com.